Hello, welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's well. Something a little bit different tonight. I've managed to snag a special guest who I'm sure a lot of people will recognise, Nathan from Slippy Limpets. So I think, as we agreed when we were fishing last week, Mr. Limpets was a more appropriate and respectful address.
In certain circles.
So what I thought we'd do is just go through a bit of a Q&A with Nathan, because he's obviously been on the scene for a long time. He's got a great channel. I'm certainly interested to hear his story right from the beginning, in terms of when he got into fishing all through to sort of the current situation now and moving forwards, I guess. So I think really to start with, the first obvious question is, what are your first memories of fishing and how did you get into it?
First memories of fishing were my dad taking us, like a lot of people, I guess. A little worm on a running ledger on a river in Scotland, fishing for trout. Really enjoyed myself. We ate the fish, which was even better. Then fished sort of sporadically for 2 to 3 years. I think that was probably age 8, and then fished sporadically for 2 to 3 years. Bought myself a little sea rod and kind of went around Eyemouth and things. Fishing for coolies in the harbour. And then, I don't know, probably about 12 I stopped fishing, started surfing, and and climbing and mountain biking, didn't really pick up a rod again until I was 29.
Oh right, so quite a long time then.
Quite a long time, yeah.
Well, that's interesting, because I mean, I'm sure some people watching this will recognise that we're down in, well, probably right on the border between North Tyneside and Northumberland, actually. Northumberland, right.
We passed a sign now.
Right, yeah, okay, right. But we're sort of fairly local to the, I guess, Tyneside areas. But it's interesting, you said your first experiences was actually up on the borders around Eyemouth.
My family was Scottish, so I spent a lot of time up there with them, and my granddad took me out to Eyemouth because he liked going for fish and chips and was willing to sit there for a couple of hours on the shoreline.
Fair enough.
Or on the harbour side.
Right, okay, so, well, that's interesting. So you've gone from sort of being pretty young to then having a big spell right until your late 20s before you got back into it.
Yeah.
So what were you doing in between in that period?
Spent a lot of time surfing when I was younger, and then I'm the type of person I can do one thing only. I can't mix up my hobbies. I like to focus, you know, I'm quite intense like that. And I surfed for about 18 years, and then, 10 years, I'm getting my maths wrong here. And then I started climbing, and I became an outdoor instructor. Spent a lot of time climbing, took 2 years off that and did mountain biking, then got back into climbing. And then I kind of I was quite in the scene at the time of climbing, and I kind of fell out of love with it. I was doing a few competitions, and I moved to a flat in North Shields right on the riverside where I could literally just fish, you know, a second from my house, and there was loads of lads on the, don't know if you know the Mark, the rubber plant or the rubber factory it was called.
I think is it gone now?
It's gone, it's been built on top of, but I literally could just jump out off my balcony on my flat onto the rubber plant, and then just I was straight there, and so every morning I was kind of out there and chucking baits into the river and catching tommies.
So I guess it was that would I be right in saying was the catalyst to get back to fishing, then moving into the flat in North Shields and being right on the time?
Yeah, I guess it was the right time, right place. I kind of was a bit disillusioned with climbing, and fishing was right there.
No, it makes sense. And that presumably was bait fishing?
It was
all
river? Bait fishing, yeah. So I did like maybe one summer season of that. Then I did a winter season. And then while I was doing kind of fishing for the cod off the pier, I was in Tynemouth Pier mostly, or in the river. And then I started kind of the internet, you know, was kind of videos were more widely available and things. And I found all these videos of different types of fishing. And downloaded and watched as much fishing as I could. It didn't matter what it was. It was like I watched hours of carp fishing videos.
Yeah. I think we've all been there.
Yeah, just trying to absorb anything that I could. And I saw some lure fishing, and all the lads were always like, oh, I can't wait to get the feathers on and start getting in amongst the mackerel and that type of thing. And I'd read the codling crouch.
Yeah. I'm sure many people, especially because it's a northeast book, that right?
It is. I think the guy was from Cullercoats. I think, don't quote us on that, mind. And I thought he's got a little section on like Burnside and St Abbs in there. And then I found these 2 magazines that were translated from Japanese into English. It was, I think the blog was 101 Bass Assassins or something. It was like a Jersey blog. A lad from Jersey. And it went into like the real technical details of lure fishing. Even to, like what side of a rock the fish is going to be when the sun's shining on it and that type of thing. And I was thinking, well, I love the sound of that. And when I saw St Abbs, I tried taking my bait rods there, and I was just like, lure all the way, you know.
Well, that was going to be that. I suppose you've started answering the question. That was going to be my next question. What was if you started out life up at Eyemouth, kind of ledger fishing, and then on the time catching codling and stuff, all bait stuff, what was the catalyst that made you think, right, actually lure fishing is what I want to focus on?
I'd seen a lot of pictures of good fish, and I'd read a lot. I think pollock were becoming a sport fish at the time, or more and more popular. And I knew that there was pollock up at St Abbs, and I was getting a little bit bored with kind of chucking baits into water and waiting. I don't know, I like to be a little bit more active, and lure fishing just seemed like a really good way to do that. So when I bought a lure rod, it was like a Daiwa D-Wave combo for 30 quid with, a real rod and line, and I used to just chuck metals and feathers off South Shields Pier. I lasted about 3 weeks at that and thought, no, I'm not really enjoying this.
And would I be right in saying, well, stroke guessing, the gear there was unrecognisable compared to what we get now in terms of lure gear? Yeah. I mean, I think with e-commerce especially, that's brought, the Japanese have always had great rods in a way, Shimano, Daiwa, that type of thing. And I think e-commerce has brought all of those JDM or just higher end products into the UK, and people are more likely to spend a little bit of extra cash if they can afford it. Sure.
And I broke everything that I owned that I was buying cheap. So I just thought, I've always had the thing where if you buy cheap, you buy twice.
Well, I think that's very true for fishing tackle generally, isn't it? So I guess actually, even though you had a long time off fishing from when you were younger, you've still always been very familiar with looking at wind forecasts and stuff with surfing. And water, I guess, which is an element of watercraft, isn't it, really? And then mixed into that, particularly fishing up St Abbs, you then kind of brought your climbing in as well. So it's kind of still included elements of everything
that I've done's really kind of helped with my fishing. Like you say, watercraft. I did a little bit of sailing in the Sea Scouts, so I know about sort of tides. Surfing especially. You can see rip tides going past and
cracking even further. Actually, isn't it?
and you kind of learn about what's good and what isn't. I did kayaking, so you see river formation. Watercraft in rivers. And the thing for me was joining all of the dots with those experiences and putting them into fishing. And that was just by, there's a little back eddy there, I might try casting my lure there, and I kind of learn what worked and what didn't. It's always never guaranteed, as you know, but
no, it's not. It makes sense. The more kind of science you can apply, the more you can shorten your rods, can't you?
Exactly, or at least just justifying what you're doing. The sea's a big place. Why am I chucking my lure here? You get bored after a few minutes of chucking it in the same place with no results.
No, that makes sense. So I guess with the lure fishing, you can go onto the rocks and you might have, one person using, say, to give an example, a 40 to 80 gram rated rod and using 25, 30 pound braid straight through. Or you can go the other way and use a 12 to 20 gram weight rod and be using much lighter braid at, say, 12. And I've noticed in your videos that you're on the lighter side, and you seem to have a light tackle ethos.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
So that was kind of from these Japanese magazines or PDFs, because one was titled LRF and the other was titled HRF.
Right.
And I really liked the light side of it, because I thought, well, you know, I catch a £5 pollock in the UK. Why do I need £40 line?
True.
You know, I get it if you're always going to keep it for food, but I like the kind of, it's a bit controversial, but the sport of it.
Yeah.
And I was going to put them back. Well, I do normally put them back, and I've actually learned that I've caught the same fish multiple times over like consecutive years.
Oh, really?
There's one fish that had a scar on its back from a cormorant, and it was 3 years in a row I caught that.
Right.
So I think the fish are habitual, so they will be there at some point again. They don't just roam around aimlessly. But coming back to the kind of the tackle ethos, it's purely to enjoy it more.
Yeah.
I caught fish with £30 braid, and it was just like I've caught it, but then the fights just, especially with something like a pollock. The crash diving, you want to sort of light a rod. It gave us a lot more fun. Having that bend in the rod than like a broomstick that just will, pull the plug out of the sea.
I mean, you say bend in the rod, I can think of several of your videos that I've watched where there's not 1 millimetre of that rod that isn't fully curved and bent.
I've had a few bent into the air, you can feel the real seat.
It's like, wow, that is like, looks, the gear's being properly pushed to its max in some of them.
And I've spent a lot of time honing that down to try and like get the best out of the gear. And recently I've gone a little heavier, so you mentioned like a bend in the rod, the sort of the larger pollock I caught in Orkney when I had that great session. I'd done 3 trips to Orkney prior to that, and I was using up to 28 gram rod, but the consistent wind and current, I realised I needed something tougher.
A bit, yeah.
And so I upped my gear to, it's a 15 to 50 gram rod, but I still use £20 braid, so I went from £12 to £20.
Right, okay.
So ideally you probably use a heavier line, but then you reduce your casting distance.
Yeah,
and also in the current, a thicker line, and especially on Orkney and around St Abbs, the current is just tremendous. So that again links back to the lighter weight. It's all owned for that sort of current and wind conditions. And
it makes sense. So I guess with your lure fishing, the kind of St Abbs area, and not just, I say St Abbs, some of the marks that you particularly fish are like, not many people, I'm guessing not many people have fished them, and that's obviously where you're putting your climbing skills into practice.
So we talked about the watercraft of surfing and things, and I realised at St Abbs there was lots of marks I could get to that didn't have litter on, that I'd probably catch more fish at, because going back to the fish being habitual, there's less pressure on them. And I actually, to me, that approach is part of the enjoyment.
Sure. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, there's marks that you fished where I just think my heart's in my mouth from just watching it on a screen, let alone there's no way I could be there. Definitely not. So, okay then, so I suppose that's one part of your lure fishing. Obviously, the other part of it is the bass fishing.
Yeah.
So you've obviously had some cracking bass as well. When did the interest in bass start? Because I'm guessing, did you start St Abbs lure fishing and then or have you always had an equal interest from the start with the lure?
No, and in all honesty, and I'll probably get a load of hate comments for this, but I thought bass fishing was an elitist sport. The gear was expensive, the lures were expensive. People were secretive, but I get that now. And you just didn't think of catching them up here. And it's still rare to get them up here. It's getting better, but I think I fished St Abbs maybe for 6 or 7 years, or that area and around the country, and then I had one trip to the Clint Peninsula, and I caught a bass, and I was like, wow. And I was actually fishing for pollock.
Right.
But I saw them swimming past, and I just took my metal at them. And one took it.
Really?
So,
Brilliant.
And then I experienced it, and when I caught it, I was like, I need a bit of this. And then when I realised it was actually learning a whole different aspect of lure fishing, because with pollock and cod or whatever, you're looking for deep water, you're looking for high current, which is the current side's perfect for bass, but it's a complete different style of fishing for bass. And
then
I realised that I was like, oh, actually, I really like this. You know, it's a new thing to learn. It's going to keep my fishing going, and I just had to travel a bit for it. That's the unfortunate thing.
That's it. As you say, around here there are bass to be caught, but you've got to be prepared for a lot of blanks around this area.
Yeah, and I think I've been all over the country fishing for England and Wales and Scotland, and I think I've been lucky to visit these places, but my ethos was that I knew they were so rare here. I'd rather spend more time in the car and sacrifice some fishing time with the chance of getting a better fish.
That's 100%, and I think for anybody watching this, that's a really good tip. If you're flogging the water in front of you and there's nothing there, do a bit of research, jump in the car, and as you say, the chances are the effort will pay off.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who catch around here quite frequently now, and I think the fishery itself's improving with the changing in temperatures, but they will, spend hours and hours and hours and hours. But I don't know, I think I'd probably get bored thrashing the same water, but then you learn the tides, you learn the moon, you learn the pressure. I understand the argument for doing both.
Yeah, and I think it ties into your comment you made about it being elitist. It's not elitist, I think, not necessarily just out of pure snobbery. It's because, particularly in places like the Northeast, people have put a hell of a lot of time in, a lot of trial and error, a lot of blank hours, and when it's successful, they kind of feel they've earned that.
Yeah, absolutely, and that makes up for it as well.
Yeah,
and I say the same with my driving or the miles that you've put in. I'm slightly different because there's probably less hours, but there's less time fishing. So, and I don't get to fish a great deal, like you, maybe once or twice a week maximum. So the times that I do fish, I want the opportunity of catching that fish, but sometimes it could, like you say, reduce some of the joy of like having 10 blanks in a row, and then catching a 3, 4, 5 pound bass and like get in.
It is a good feeling. So a couple of quick fire questions then. Anybody getting into lure fishing, either for bass or for pollock or even wrasse, whatever's on their territory, what would be a couple of tips that you would give them to get started?
You don't need to buy expensive gear. I just said you buy cheap, buy twice. That Daiwa combo that I talked about that cost us 35 quid lasted 3 months. But then saying that, I bought a Shimano Hyperloop reel for a tenner, which lasted us 6 years.
Really?
Because it's just plastic. There was nothing. And I would say, speak to people in your area that you fish to figure out what is appropriate, because someone fishing in Cornwall who's fishing 5-6 meters of water can use quite light tackle. But if you're going if you're in the northeast of Scotland with massive depths of water, then 20 grams isn't necessarily going to be a suitable rod for you. And just research. Watch as many YouTube videos, especially Full Circle Angling and Slippy Limpets. And just, but the biggest thing for me, and slightly maybe off topic, but is don't chase the bite. So social media is full of people catching fish, and you never see the blanks and the hard times. And if you see someone going fishing a certain spot one day and to have a really cracking session, it's not guaranteed to be that for the next time. So don't get disheartened if that happens, because it will happen to everyone a lot when you're first starting.
100%. Okay then, so I guess the next big burning question for me is, you've got back into fishing in your late 20s. And then what's the YouTube story?
Because I was a climber when I met my other half, apparently I was cool. And when I started fishing and stopped climbing, I think I heard the words, "Nathan, you used to be cool." So, and I also heard, "Will you stop talking about fishing? Just stop talking about fishing, please." So YouTube was a way of telling my story. And because when I mountain biked, I got into making videos. Strapped a camcorder to my helmet, because it was at the times before GoPros. and edit videos. Didn't post them or anything. It was just for the enjoyment.
I just made them without posting?
Yeah, I think.
Right, okay.
I don't know if YouTube existed then.
Right.
If not, we just shared it between my mates, you know.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. I mean, I've definitely heard those words, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this will have heard them as well. So, right. So in terms of I have to ask, Slippy Limpets. It's very unique. It's obviously anybody in the UK that's a sea angler, I would guess, will be familiar with those two words, and obviously
possibly,
yourself.
yeah. So I guess you're going to ask where did the name come from? Yeah. So I used to like most people go for a walk around at low tide, and I went out with my other half at the time, and normally limpets are like, we're standing on slippery rock now.
Yeah.
Normally limpets give you a little bit of grip. There was one day when these limpets were covered in the slimy green stuff, so I said watch out for those slippy limpets. And Lucy said, oh, that's a great name for a blog.
That was it.
And so I started a blog because I like taking pictures, local pictures. Started writing up my fishing stories on the blog. And that's what I got. I'm not very good at writing, so that's also why I started posting on YouTube.
So it was just that split second.
It was just that, yeah.
Here we are.
And that was probably 13 years ago now. So
really, yeah. So in terms of the Slippy Limpets channel, then, how long has that been going in terms of your regular posting and your growth and everything?
So I started my channel 7 years ago, but I didn't monetize it until 2019. Was that when the pandemic started? 2020?
Yeah, 20, yeah.
So for those that don't know, YouTube doesn't promote channels that aren't monetized very much. And I didn't monetize my channel because if you've seen any of my early videos, it's just kind of rave music and things with me fishing. It's more like a music video than a fishing video, but I like doing that. It helped my editing because I could cut to the music and things, but copyright strikes would really, do us in. So when I monetized, I had to stop doing that. Right, and so since 2019, I think I had 2,800 subs, and now I've on 21,000. So growth's been okay. Channels have obviously started and gone past me, but I do it for the enjoyment rather than the numbers, in all honesty.
Knocking on 20,000 subs in 2.5 years? Something like that? That's huge growth.
That'll be 3 years now, because it was January when I monetized, so 3 years.
Still really strong growth over that period, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in terms of the channel then, any particularly sort of memorable catches?
My big pollock.
Was that Orkney?
On Orkney, yeah. 13 pound, 13 ounces.
Wow.
I'd spent 10 years trying to catch a double figure pollock.
Right.
And I actually cheered more for that than a double figure bass. I think it took us less time to catch a double figure bass than it did to catch a double figure pollock, and I put a lot of effort into that pollock. And to have 3 doubles in a day was like...
That's just, that's like once in a lifetime stuff potentially, isn't it?
Hopefully next year as well.
Hopefully not, but it could be. But,
another one was obviously like big bass. I wanted the big 3, so I wanted a double figure cod, a double figure pollock, and a double figure bass from the shore. I haven't caught a double figure cod using lures, only on bait.
That's a big ask, isn't it? That's a big challenge.
It is, yeah. In the UK, obviously you can go abroad and do these things, but I guess my other memorable time was actually going out on a slightly bigger channel than mine, the Fish Locker, and going out on his boat targeting blue sharks with spinning gear. I used my 50 gram rod to catch I think I had a 70 or 60 pound blue shark, and it was just
incredible.
An immense experience.
I
really.
bet. Wow. Well, that's a 10, 13, well, just shy 14 pound pollock. Incredible fish. Obviously, I bet there's every angler in the UK wants to catch a 10 pound bass. Probably not just in the UK, but in Europe and wherever they swim. That's an amazing fish. And was that on a what sort of lure was that on? A top water or a soft plastic?
Wobbly bass.
Yeah.
That was on the smallest fish, crazy eel.
Was it?
So 10 grams, 10 mil body, 100 mil body.
Really?
On my 12-pound braid, and it was, I think it went at 13 pounds 8.
Wow, wow, that is incredible fish, that. So, okay, so I guess we've covered from sort of when you took up fishing, veered away and then got back into it. You talked us through the YouTube story, and then very recently, only maybe a month ago roughly, you became part of the Century team.
Oh yeah, big surprise. You know, it's and I'm not just saying this because I'm part of the team now, because it's not something that I normally do, but obviously being a local brand and being, you know, pretty much arguably the pinnacle of sort of rod manufacturing. You know, there's not many other rod builders that can say them, you know, make Formula One car parts out of carbon and things.
No,
so
true.
Yeah, that just came along by kind of fluke, really. I wasn't going to apply, and a couple of the team members suggested that I should apply. So, so I did, and amazingly, I got in.
Well, I mean, yeah, excellent. So what's next for Slippy Limpets, or Mr. Slippy Limpets, I should say?
I've got a couple of trips planned. I'm going to fish the Pembrokeshire Bass Tournament. I'm going to fish the Mogstaff Bass Tournament. I might get down to the Cornish Lure Festival.
Right.
I'm spending 5 days in Ireland. I want to go back to Orkney and catch a bigger pollock.
I bet.
That's kind of my dream. I want to break that 14. Well, actually 15 pound is my target now.
Fantastic.
And just to fish as much as I can, and probably I'm thinking to diversify a little this year. I'm going to target some other species like we did the other day. Try and catch some rays, some huss, do a bit more bait fishing.
Okay.
Because I've caught, you know, I've done well in the pollock, in lure fishing, and there's a lot that I haven't done in bait fishing. So.
Sure. Right. Well, I've certainly enjoyed that. I hope you have too. Thanks to Nathan for
thank you very much
coming
for
on the channel. And in the highly unlikely event that you're watching this and you haven't seen Slippy Limpets, check it out, because it's a cracking channel and there's loads of brilliant stuff on there. So Nathan, thanks again.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers. Thank you.
Check out Full Circle if you're watching this as well and haven't subscribed already, because it helps, believe me.
So that's Q&A with Slippy Limpets. So hope you've enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Tight lines, keep fishing. We'll see you soon.
Thanks everyone. Bye.